In just 6 days, Egypt lost everything, and Nasser nearly resigned on Lev TV.
The Egyptian army is bogged down in Yemen. Nasser's reforms are tended to be idealistic. They weren't necessarily always well thought through. They definitely weren't always executed very well. The army started to get a little corrupt because people began to realize they could make money from within. In other words, his dream is kind of falling apart while he's alive. But he's also contending with a new force in the world, which is describable as Islamic fundamentalism. So there's a point where he makes a speech and he talks about an event that he had with the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And the speech is really a fascinating speech. It's a cultural speech, right? I want to say he's making the speech around 1958, 1960. I don't know the exact year, but it's early in his presidency. And he said, when we first did the revolution, we met with the Brotherhood because we wanted to come up with a compromise so that we didn't have to think about any kind of struggle going forward. We'd have a unified Egypt. And he said, okay, what is the one thing you want to see? And the Brotherhood leader said, I want women to cover their hair. And Nasser goes, that's the thing you wanted to see? Like, that's the change that will make Egypt a better place, is women are covering their hair? And he says, yeah. And Nasser says to him, no, in your house, you make the rules. But I think people should be free to do whatever they want to outside of the home, right? You want to cover your hair, you don't. And the guy's like, no, you're the president of Egypt. You have to set the moral standard. So Nasser tells him, he says, well, I checked up your daughter. She's in medical school and her hair isn't covered. You can't cover your daughter's hair. You want me to go cover the hair of 10 million Egyptian women? There's a crowd. Nasser is giving this speech to a live crowd. They erupt with laughter because just 65 years ago, the idea that Egyptian women were going to cover their hair was a laughable thing. In other words, there wasn't this kind of fundamentalist Muslim movement yet. It was forming with the Brotherhood. The idea of it was there. It hadn't really gripped the Middle East yet. And Nasser is having to deal with that. He's dealing with Yemen. He's got a government that's slowly becoming more and more corrupt. Some of his plans aren't totally well thought through. Syria breaks away. The Sudan breaks away, and then comes 1967. The Israelis begin doing raids in Jordan. So King Hussein of Jordan is telling Nasser, you have to do something to help us. The Israelis keep attacking us. And Nasser is in a position where he feels like if he doesn't do something, that he'll look foolish. So he closes the Straits of Tiran. So if you look at a map, the Gulf of Aqaba is a very thin body of water between Saudi Arabia and the Sinai. Jordan and Israel touch the Gulf of Aqaba. Israel has a tiny little city there called Eilat, and it got something like maybe 2%, maybe 5% of its trade through Eilat. It was Red Sea trade. When Nasser closes the Straits of Jordan, he's closing somewhere between 2 to 5% of Israel's trade. But he doesn't actually close it. He declares it closed and then doesn't enforce it. So it's a completely symbolic gesture. And the reason he's doing it is he feels backed into a corner and feels he has to do something. So he doesn't enforce it. So Israeli ships could just freely go through it. And then what ends up happening is Israel says, you cut off the lifeblood of Israel, we can't function like this. And they begin to rattle their saber like, we're going to go to war. Nasser actually sends a communique to President Lyndon Baines Johnson and says, I want to resolve this peacefully. The Israelis sound like they're going to probably attack Egypt at some point. Where are we on this? And Johnson says, don't worry about it. I promise you Israel will not attack. And Nasser needs to know because so much of the military is in Yemen and the Israelis do attack. They completely surprise the Jordanian, Syrian, and Egyptian military, and they defeat all three simultaneously in a blitzkrieg-style war reminiscent of German tactics in World War II. They do it in 6 days. So if you really hate an Egyptian and you just want to hurt them, just go 1967. It is simply one of the most humiliating events ever. And it's catastrophic. At that point, Nasser has lost all sorts of legitimacy. Egypt is loses the Sinai. The Suez Canal, which he had, politically managed to keep and hold, is now shut down because the Israelis are on the other side of the Suez Canal, cutting off European and Asian trade. They now have to go all the way around Africa. The Israelis seize the Golan Heights, they seize the Gaza Strip, they seize the West Bank. And so now all of a sudden the Palestinian population, which had been, the West Bank was in Jordan, the Gaza Strip was administered by Egypt, that Palestinian population is now under total Israeli control, except for the refugees in Syria or the refugees in Jordan or Egypt. And so it's a shocking, game-changing event. Nasser walks into Maidan Tahrir and he says, "I don't deserve to be your president. I'm ready to resign." And the people start shouting his name and they lift him into the air and they say, "You're our president." And he remains the president of Egypt for 3 years until he dies. But those are, 3 relatively unproductive years. In effect, what happened was he went up against the United States and he didn't quite pull it off. There's a lot of lessons in what went wrong, and he's worth examining.
Who do you think was the most powerful and influential Middle Eastern leader of the last 100 years? Let me know what you think in the comments.